A riparian habitat is a place that next to the stream that would have water-loving plants that really like to have that moist soil and have their roots connecting to the water table. There's exchange of water in the water table with the stream water, and it creates a lot of shade and shelter for aquatic organisms. It's definitely has a lot of benefits. One, having a really healthy riparian corridor can add a lot of root density to the soil, which helps prevent erosion. It can add a lot of roughness in the floodplain to reduce velocities when the channel is flooding, so it can actually reduce some of those erosion hazards. Having that really healthy plant community can filter out contaminants, maybe from nearby roadways or farming practices. It's really important. Certainly along the Little Beaver Kill, there's a lot of wetland habitat as well, and we see a lot of dogwoods and alders and willows. It's really important plant to have in this basin. And so an area like this behind me would typically see a lot of dogwoods and a lot of willows, but it has in the past been cleared. It'd be really hard to return this area to a native plant community without having so many invasive species such as multiflora rose, and in the Beaver Kill we've seen a lot of barberry as well. And it really does take over very quickly. It's hard to get rid of because the roots are very stubborn, and you got to do a lot of digging to make sure you get every single root fragment. So it's very difficult to deal with. It would be just one single type of plant that will take over the entire area. It's pretty important to try and keep these contained at the minimum, but certainly if we have the opportunity to go in and remove them and then replant immediately with more vegetation, native vegetation, then we get that diversity in there, and the habitat value of the riparian area just dramatically will improve.
So one of the issues is that some of the non-native plants, like Japanese knotweed, doesn't have the strong, deep roots that the shrubs and the trees have, and so they don't hold the banks as well. They don't provide as much resistance and as strength in the bank soil, and so the banks can be more susceptible to erosion without the native plants. Also, the leaves and the woody material that these plants shed into the stream sets the biochemistry of the stream. In these mountainous cold water streams, those leaves are the nutrient source for the stream. And so when you only have one or two types of plants providing those leaves, you don't have as diverse a biochemistry and a nutrient source for the stream.
Something that our program, the Ashokan Watershed Stream Management Program, is trying to do is provide, information to local landowners that have streamside property, to inform them that maybe they can leave a little area next to the stream with some native vegetation and kind of let it be natural because of all the benefits. And we even offer a program with the Ashokan Watershed Stream Management Program called the Catskill Streams Buffer Initiative, and we will actually provide plant material and labor to install it. So right now we're collecting a proposed planting site, which we will hand over to our Catskill Streams Buffer Initiative coordinator, and he will reach out to the landowners at a later time to propose doing some restoration here. And they are recording with their GPS. They are gathering information on the width, the length of the area that might be suitable for doing some riparian buffer work here. And so they're taking some notes of what is currently the plant community that's currently existing here. There's a lot of grasses and sedges, so there's some good stuff, but there's lacking a there's lacking trees and larger shrubs like willows and dogwoods that you would typically see in a situation like this. There's also a lot of invasive species. There's some right upstream and there's some right behind me. A lot of multiflora rows here, and it will continue to probably take over if nothing is done to halt its progression. So this part of this planting project plan would be to come in with a lot of potted material, a lot of trees and shrubs would probably go in here, and there would also be some invasive species removal work. So it would be a big project, but very beneficial one for this section of stream. It's kind of an ideal spot right here because we do have a really stable section of stream. We got this really low gradient, very calm channel with floodplain access over here and lots of room to work with. There's not a house sitting right there, and it's not really like heavily managed. It's not constantly being mowed, so the landowners might be more willing to do some buffer restoration here. It's not as heavily managed, but it's a kind of a lower risk project to do because we don't expect there to be a lot of erosion in this reach. So that's one of the worries that we have of doing a buffer restoration in a site that's already just way too unstable and then likely to migrate a lot. The channel will migrate a lot and erode its banks, and then we end up losing all of the plant material that we put in. So that's a risk that we often try to avoid because the trees take a long time to grow. But once they grow big, then they offer a lot of protection, but they're weak when you first put them in. They take a little time to develop those roots.
But at the same time, those are the areas that need most restoration.
Yes, so any project that we do in a reach that is really unstable and has a lot of erosion, planting a riparian buffer is important, but you also need to get in there and do some stabilization work in the channel because something in the channel isn't functioning right and causing that erosion. The plants itself won't fix that erosion if there's a deeper rooted problem in the channel itself. So that would require a larger scale restoration project. Got a couple of different kinds here. I'm not entirely sure what kind these are. But willows, we get pretty excited when we find willows in the near the channel. Because one, well, it's native and is an ideal plant to have in the riparian zone. And two, we are constantly looking for plant material sources for buffer restoration projects that we do elsewhere. We love to target willows and dogwood species. There's several in the Catskills. And we love to target them because they are easy to propagate. All we have to do is cut off a few stems and cut them into little 2 feet chunks and go pound them in the ground somewhere else, and then they will root themselves. It takes very little effort and you can plant a lot of willows very quickly, and they grow really quickly, so that's why we like them, because they will establish themselves in just a couple of years versus 10 years like a tree. So they will offer those roots very quickly and can stabilize a bank, offer stability more quickly for a bank.
Is that something a landowner can do on their own? Like if they find willows, they can just get the cutting and just stick them in the ground?
Sometimes what we do a lot of site visits to landowners that contact our office and have questions about their section of stream. They want to know what they can do to better improve the stability in their little channel. So we will come out and we will look at their property and see how the channel is doing. Is it, stable? Is it kind of stable, or is it really unhappy? And in a major state of adjustment. If it's kind of in that zone where it's kind of maybe a little bit unstable, we will still suggest that the landowner take some willow cuttings and pound them into the base of the bank, and that is something that they can easily do on their own, and a lot of landowners do this because it is very cheap and cost effective and it doesn't take that much effort to, in a couple of years you will have many willows growing along that bank, offering a lot of roughness and reducing that shear stress right up against the bank, and so that will reduce erosion potential. It's a very easy way to do that. Over on Cold Brook, on the other side of Kenneth Wilson State Park, our program has planted some willow beds, willow and dogwood beds. So we have cuttings from the region that we actually planted in long rows to use in the future for restoration projects, just because it is kind of hard to get access to a lot of plant material source. And it's so much cheaper if you can just grow it yourself instead of ordering it from a plant nursery or even hiking way out into the middle of nowhere to gather the material yourself. So we established some willow harvesting beds that can, in probably a couple years, be ready to start harvesting mass amounts of plant material to restore areas just like this.